Let us begin with a word that has frightened people unnecessarily for about 2,000 years. The word is emptiness, and if you have heard it before, in passing, attached to Buddhism, you may have picked up an impression along with it. Something cold, something bleak, a teaching that the world is not real and nothing matters, and the wise thing is to care about nothing. That is not what it means. It has never been what it means. And the whole of tonight is a slow walk toward what it actually points at, which is much closer to the opposite. Room, openness, space, the possibility of breathing. We are going to spend these hours with a very short text called the Heart Sutra. It is short enough to recite in about 3 minutes, and is chanted every day in monasteries from Japan to California, and people have been turning it over for well over 1,000 years without exhausting it, and it contains one line so famous that it has been carved into stone and printed on tea towels and quoted by people who could not tell you what it means. We will take it very slowly indeed. There is no hurry at all tonight. Before we go further, settle yourself. There is nowhere to be tonight, and nothing here to accomplish. If you would like, feel free to share what time it is where you are, and what the night is doing outside your window. And if you would like to carry these quiet hours into other evenings, this channel is also on Spotify. The link is waiting in the description below for whenever you want it, which does not need to be now. You do not need any background in Buddhism to be here. You do not need to follow the argument, or remember anything, or arrive anywhere by the end. There will be old teachings and slow stories, and long stretches where very little happens, and none of it is a test. If your attention wanders off mid-sentence and comes back 3 chapters later, that is not a failure. That is the sound of a person falling asleep, which is what this is for. So let the body arrive. Let your weight be handed over completely to whatever is holding you, the mattress, the pillow, the blanket across your legs. Let the shoulders come down away from the ears. Let the jaw loosen. Let the hands rest wherever they have fallen. Take one slow breath in and let it go out again without managing the way it leaves. And let us begin at the simplest possible place, which is a room. The house was finished on a Thursday afternoon in the middle of October. It had taken most of a year, 14 months in the end, which was longer than anyone wanted, and about what everyone had privately expected, as these things do. And the builder was a man in his 60s who had built perhaps 40 houses in that part of the country, and who had a particular ritual at the end of each one. He would not hand over the keys with anyone else there, not because he was superstitious about it. He would have been embarrassed to be called that, but because he had noticed, over 40 houses, that the 10 minutes after a family first walks into an empty house are not 10 minutes that anyone should be watching. No apprentices, no van, no clipboard. He would arrange to meet the family at the house alone, and he would let them in, and then go and stand outside by the gate and smoke and look at the roof line for about 10 minutes, and then come back in. The family that Thursday was a couple in their 30s and 2 children, one of whom was 4 and one of whom was small enough to be carried. They came through the front door and into a house with nothing at all in it. Bare boards, still with a scatter of plaster dust in the corners where the last sweep had missed. White walls with the smell of new paint still coming off them, and that other smell a new building has that nobody has ever named properly. Sawdust and cement and something faintly mineral. no curtains, so the afternoon light came in flat and wide and lay across the floor in long shapes. No furniture, no boxes, nothing on any wall. And the sound, that is what people always remember afterward. The sound of an empty house, which is not silence, but a kind of ringing openness, where every footstep comes back at you off the walls, and your own voice arrives a fraction late and slightly larger than you expected. The 4-year-old shouted, because 4-year-olds do in an empty room, and then stopped, startled by what came back, and then shouted again deliberately to hear it happen, and then ran the length of the hall and back, and lay down flat on the floorboards in the middle of the living room and stared at the ceiling. The adults walked around not saying very much, in the way people do. They looked into rooms they had seen 100 times as plans and framing and plasterboard, and had never once seen as rooms. And the woman said, at some point, standing in the kitchen doorway, with the baby on her hip, "It will never be this big again." Which is not true in the way that houses are measured, and is completely true in every other way. The builder came back in from the gate around then. He is not a man who makes speeches. He said something about the boiler and where the stopcock was, and that the second bedroom window would want easing in a wet winter, and that they should not paint the back door until the spring. And then, on the way out, he said the thing he always said, which his own father had said to him on a doorstep in 1971, and which he had never once explained to anybody. "You have bought the space," he said. "The house is just what keeps the weather off it." They moved in over the following fortnight, and within a month it was a house like any other. A sofa against the long wall, coats on the back of the door, the 4-year-old's drawings held to the fridge with magnets shaped like fruit, a permanent low-level shortage of surfaces. Nobody in that family has ever forgotten that Thursday afternoon. The woman said, years later, that she had expected the day they moved in to be the day it became theirs. It was not. It was that hour with nothing in it, standing in the doorway with a baby on her hip, listening to a 4-year-old shout at the ceiling for the pleasure of hearing it come back. Come back now, gently, to your own room, to the dark and the weight of the blankets and the small sounds a building makes at this hour. Hold that empty house for a moment, because it is going to carry us a long way tonight. Think about what you actually use in any room you have ever lived in. You do not use the walls. You use the space they hold. You do not use the ceiling. You use the volume of air underneath it. Nobody has ever sat down in a wall or stored anything in one. The walls are essential. Take them away, and the space stops being a room and becomes a field. But the walls are not the point. They are what makes the emptiness usable. This is one of the oldest images in Asian thought, and it turns up in more than one tradition, because it is the sort of thing you notice if you sit and look at an ordinary object for long enough. A cup is useful because of the hollow in it. A door is useful because of the gap, not the wood. A window is a hole somebody has gone to a great deal of trouble to make, and then fitted with glass so that it can go on being a hole while keeping the rain out. A wheel turns on the space at the center of it, where the axle is not quite touching. A flute is a piece of wood that has been made valuable by drilling holes in it. In each case, the thing is real, and the emptiness is what it is for. And notice that nobody finds this bleak. Nobody stands in a kitchen holding the mug and feels sad about the hollow. We are entirely comfortable with useful emptiness when it is made of clay. It is only when the same word is turned toward our own lives that something in us flinches and assumes it must mean loss. Now hold on to that feeling. The empty house, the light on bare boards, the shout coming back of the walls. Because when the Heart Sutra says emptiness, this is much closer to what it is pointing at than anything bleak. Not a void, not an absence where something ought to be and is not, not nothing, and not a polite word for nothing. Room, the kind of emptiness a house has on the day it is finished, when everything is still possible and nothing has been decided, and there is space enough in every room for a 4-year-old to lie on the floor and look at the ceiling. That is where we are going tonight, and I will say plainly what we are not doing, because there is a version of this teaching that is delivered coldly and does harm. Nobody is going to tell you tonight that the things in your life are illusions. Nobody is going to tell you that your grief is a mistake, or that the people you love are not there, or that caring is a beginner's error. That is not this teaching, and it never was. And if you have met a version of Buddhism that sounded like that, it was badly transmitted somewhere along the line, which happens to every tradition that travels far enough. There is a reason the text we are opening tonight is called the Heart Sutra, rather than the Void Sutra. Nobody in 1500 years has copied it out by lamplight because it told them that nothing matters. What the sutra is actually doing is much gentler and much more surprising. It is loosening the grip. It is opening space around things that have become pressed right up against your face. It is showing that the walls you thought were solid are, in fact, holding something open. And notice, while we are here, that a full room is not a better room. We know this perfectly well, and we act as though we do not. Everyone has been in a house so full of things that there is nowhere to put a cup down, and everyone knows the particular tiredness of being in a room like that. It is not the objects that exhaust you. It is the absence of anywhere for your attention to rest. The same is true of a life, and it is true of a mind, and it is very likely true of yours at this hour. Not too many problems necessarily, but no space between them. You may already know the feeling in a small way. There is a particular sensation when a worry that has been enormous for a week is suddenly seen from a bit further back. Nothing about it has changed, but there is air around it. There is the feeling of a room after an argument has ended and somebody has opened a window. There is the way a difficult day looks from a train window an hour later. There is the sudden ordinariness of a thing you dreaded the morning after it happened. Space around a thing changes the thing completely, without altering it at all. That sentence is worth taking to sleep with you, if anything from this hour is. Nothing needs to be fixed for the room to open. Nothing needs to be understood. That is the gift the Heart Sutra is offering, and we have all night to receive it slowly. And that space is not something you have to build. It is not a project, and it is certainly not something to be achieved before morning by trying hard in the dark. It is already there. It has been there all evening, underneath everything you have been thinking, the way the volume of a room is there underneath the furniture. Nothing has to be cleared out. Nothing has to be resolved. We are only going to spend a few hours noticing it, and the noticing is the whole of the practice. Let us rest here for a few breaths. Feel the room you are in, not the objects in it, the volume, the shape of the air you are lying inside, the air between you and the ceiling, the space in the corners you cannot see, the doorway with nothing in it. Feel the space inside your own body too, which is a strange thought at this hour and an entirely accurate one. The chest opening and closing around a volume of air. The throat, which is a passage. Your body is more architecture than substance, and it has been quietly working on the emptiness inside it all night, without any instruction from you. Let the shoulders drop back. Let the arms be heavy. Let the hands lie open, holding nothing. Let the breath come in and go out, filling a space and leaving it, filling and leaving. There is nothing to hold on to tonight. There is nothing that needs to be filled. Let the jaw come apart. Let the face soften, the forehead, the eyelids, the small muscles at the corners of the mouth. Let the belly be soft and the breath come down into it. The house is finished and there is nothing in it yet, and the light is lying across the floor in long shapes. When you are ready, we will go on together, because before we open the text itself, it seems only fair to say what it is and where it came from, and to be honest about that rather than mystical, because the honest version is more interesting than the mystical one. There is a copyist at a table somewhere in the 8th century, with a lamp and a small brush and a short piece of text in front of him, and he is about to be finished before midnight, which almost never happens. Let us go and look over his shoulder. The lamp is a small dish of oil with a floating wick, and it gives about as much light as a candle, and he has arranged it so that it falls on the paper from the left, because he is right-handed and does not want to write in the shadow of his own hand. The table is low. He is sitting on the floor with his legs folded and a board across his knees, and he has been doing this for 11 years, and his back has developed some strong opinions about it, that it expresses most evenings around this time. In front of him, held flat at the corners, is a very short text. That is the thing he keeps noticing about it tonight, and has noticed before. He has spent whole seasons on single sutras, texts that run to hundreds of pages, that take a winter, where you finish one section and know that there are 9 more, and that the third one has a passage you always get wrong. He has copied a text so long that the man who commissioned it died before it was finished. This one is short enough that he will be finished with it well before midnight. He copies this one perhaps 20 times a year, and has done since he was an apprentice, and could probably do it with his eyes shut if the spacing did not matter. There is always demand for it, in a way there is not for the long ones. People take it on journeys. There is a widespread feeling that this particular text is a good thing to have with you when you are going somewhere uncertain. Merchants take it, and travellers, and once a man came in and paid for a copy to be sewn into the lining of a coat. There is nothing in the text itself that promises anything of the sort, and it does not seem to matter to anyone. The paper is good. That matters more than people think. Bad paper drinks the ink and the strokes bleed, and you spend the evening compensating. He does not think about the meaning while he is writing. That is not what the work is. The work is the pressure of the brush and the wetness of the ink and the spacing, which is why copyists who think about the meaning tend to make mistakes. But he knows this one by heart, of course. Everybody does. Children know it. It is chanted in the hall every morning before it is light, at a speed that makes the words run together into something that is more like weather than language. He could recite it while doing almost anything else. He has recited it while walking, while ill, while waiting for a boat, and once at 19, while extremely frightened in a place where being frightened was reasonable. And every so often, somewhere near the middle, a phrase will surface out of the physical work and stand up in him, usually the same one, usually when he is tired, and he will have to put the brush down for a moment. Not tonight. Tonight his hand is steady, and the ink is behaving, and the whole thing goes past him like water. Tonight it goes smoothly. He finishes it at some hour before midnight, and sits back and works his shoulders. He cleans the brush properly, because the brush is expensive, and he is not a young man showing off anymore. He puts the lamp out. He goes to bed in a cold room and sleeps, and the copy he made that night may still exist somewhere, or may have been ash within a century, and he would not have thought either outcome very remarkable. There were a great many men like him, in a great many cold rooms, for a very long time. That is worth holding for a moment before we open the text. The sheer number of hands this thing has passed through. Somebody composed it. Somebody memorized it. Somebody carried it over mountains in a bundle with their spare sandals. Somebody translated it into a language it was never written for, and made choices, and got some of them wrong. Somebody chanted it every morning in a hall for 40 years, and never once thought about what it meant. And somebody else sat with one line of it for a decade and came out changed. And it reaches you tonight, in the dark, in English, on a recording, in a form none of them could have imagined. And it still does the same thing it always did, which is to open a space around the person listening. Come back now, gently, to your own room, to the dark and the blankets and your own breathing. Let us be honest about what this text is, because the honest version is more interesting than the reverent one. The Heart Sutra is a Mahayana text, that is, it belongs to a later stream of Buddhism, and it was composed some centuries after the Buddha lived, not recorded from him directly. Scholars argue about exactly when it was composed, and where, and in which language first, as scholars do, and the argument is a good one, and has been going on for 100 years. What is not in dispute is that it is a condensation. There is a very large body of earlier literature about the perfection of wisdom, running to thousands of pages, and the Heart Sutra is what happens when somebody squeezes all of it into something you can hold in your mouth. That is worth saying plainly, because you may hear it spoken about as though it were the Buddha's own words on his own tongue, and it is not, and it does not need to be. Its authority is not that somebody famous said it. Its authority is that it describes something and you can go and check. The speaker in the text is Avalokiteshvara, a bodhisattva, a figure of compassion, whose name is worth hearing once and then letting go of. And the person being addressed is Shariputra, who in the older tradition is the disciple famous for being the sharpest analytical mind in the community. That detail is doing something. The most rigorous person in the room is the one being told this, not the most devout, not the most credulous, the one who would take an argument apart to see how it was made. Whoever composed this text was making a quiet claim by choosing him. This will survive being examined. And here is how it opens in plain English, which is the only way I am going to give it to you tonight. The exact wording varies enormously between translations, and any version you have met is one person's judgment call about words that do not have English equivalents. It says roughly, while practicing deeply, he looked and he saw that all the parts a person is made of are empty of separate self-existence. And seeing this, he was free of all suffering. Now, there are two things in that sentence I want to slow down over, and they will take us most of the night. The first is the word we will come back to again and again. Empty of separate self-existence. Not empty. Empty of something specific. That preposition is the whole teaching, and losing it is how the word emptiness became frightening in English. We will come to that properly in a few hours. The second is the verb, he looked. Not, he believed. Not, he was told and accepted it. Not, he had faith that it was so. The text opens with somebody looking at their own experience closely enough to see how it is put together. That is an extraordinary way to open a religious text, and it is characteristic of this tradition at its best. What is being offered is not a doctrine to be adopted. It is a report from someone who looked, along with an implicit invitation. Go and look yourself and see whether it is so. You can test the whole thing tonight, lying in the dark, without believing anything at all. And if you look and find nothing, then you have found nothing, and no harm has been done to anyone. And that matters for a very practical reason at this hour. If tonight required belief, it would be work. You would have to talk yourself into something, and the part of you that is tired and skeptical and lying awake would put up an argument, and you would spend the small hours negotiating with yourself, which is exactly what you have probably been doing already. And notice how much of what passes for spirituality asks the opposite. Believe this, accept that, hold this position against your own doubts. There is a whole industry of things you are supposed to affirm at 3 a.m, while feeling nothing of the kind. Looking is not work. Looking is the most restful thing a mind can do, because it is the only thing a mind can do that involves no effort at all, no arranging, no defending, no deciding. You do not have to conclude anything about what you see. You just have to look at it. So that is all that will be asked of you tonight, and only when it comes easily. If at any point the looking turns into effort, stop looking and go back to the plain, warm facts of the room. The blanket, the pillow, the sound outside, the next breath. Let us do a very small piece of it now. Bring your attention to the last thought you had, not the content of it, never mind what it was about. Just the fact that a thought happened a moment ago in you. Where was it exactly? Not metaphorically. Actually, where? Somewhere behind the eyes, most people say, or somewhere in the head. And then when you look more carefully, the location gets vague. There is no edge to it. There is no place you could point at and say, it was there, and it was that big, and it stopped here. And what was it made of? Not the words in it, the thing itself. Was there any substance to it? When you turn your attention toward it, is there anything to take hold of? Or has it already gone and left nothing at all where it was? You do not have to answer any of that. You cannot answer it in words, which is rather the point. Just notice what happens when you look for the thing rather than following it. Most people, doing this for the first time, notice something like, there was less there than I expected. And notice that this does not make the thought unreal. It was a real thought. It had effects. It may have tightened your chest, or sent you somewhere, or kept you awake. Real, and with nothing solid in it anywhere. Those two things sit together perfectly well, and almost everything in this text lives in that pairing. That is the beginning of the whole teaching. That is what the man in the text is reporting. He looked at everything a person is made of. The body, the sensations, the perceptions, the habits of mind, the awareness itself. And he found no solid separate thing anywhere in any of it. Not absence, not nothing. Just no solid separate thing anywhere in any of it. And what he found instead is what we will spend the rest of the night on. Notice too the second half of that opening sentence, which people skip past on the way to the famous line. Seeing this, the text says, he was free of suffering. Not, he understood something clever. Not, he acquired a philosophy. The claim is entirely practical. Whatever he saw when he looked, the seeing of it loosened something that had been tight. That is the only reason any of this is worth 3 hours of your night. Not because it is profound, because it makes a difference to what it is like to be a person lying in the dark. And there is one more thing worth saying before we go on, because it will save you some difficulty tonight. This text is going to sound, in places, like it is contradicting itself. It says a thing and then says the opposite. It lists everything a person is made of and then says that none of it is there in the way you think it is, and then goes on speaking about the world as though it obviously exists, which it does. That is not carelessness. It is a deliberate technique. The text is not trying to give you a position to hold. It is trying to take the positions out of your hands, one at a time, until there is nothing left to grip and you are simply looking. So if a line tonight makes your mind lurch slightly, that is not a failure of comprehension. That is the text working. Let us rest here for a while. There is nothing to work out, nothing to accept, nothing to believe before morning. Let the shoulders come down. Let the arms be heavy. Let the hands lie open on the blanket, holding nothing. Let the jaw come apart, and the tongue rest low in the mouth, and the space between the eyebrows go smooth and wide. Let the breath come in, and let it go out, and let the out-breath be the longer of the two without your arranging it. And if thoughts come, as they will, and as they should, let them come. You are not trying to have fewer of them tonight. Notice, if you happen to, that each one arrives from nowhere in particular and goes back to nowhere in particular and leaves no mark on the place it was in. The lamp is lit. The text is short. There is no hurry. Let the room hold you. Let the bed take your whole weight, the head, the shoulders, the hips, the heels. Let each of them give a little more than it was giving a moment ago. When you are ready, we will go on together, because the line everyone knows is coming, and it is only 4 words long in most translations, and it is the reason this text has survived 1500 years of people arguing about it. Form is emptiness. It sounds, at first hearing, like a denial of the world. It is the exact opposite of that, and to see why, we are going to go and stand in a very hot room and watch a woman make a bowl out of 1 breath of air. The room is unbearably hot and smells of scorched metal, and there is a low roar coming out of the furnace that never stops, day or night, all year, because you cannot let a glass furnace go cold. She works with the doors open in winter and the doors open in summer, and it makes very little difference to anything except the draft around her ankles. What she is doing at this moment is standing with a long steel pipe resting across a rail, turning it slowly with her left hand, while the far end of it holds a lump of molten glass, the colour of a sunset going into orange and white. It does not look like glass. It looks like honey that has been heated past all sense. It moves the way something alive moves. It sags, it stretches, It wants to go downward and sideways at every moment, and the entire skill of the job is a continuous negotiation with gravity, conducted by turning forever at exactly the right speed. She rolls it on a flat steel table to bring it into shape. The sound is a low grinding hiss, and the surface goes from ragged to smooth in about 4 passes, and the color drops a shade as it touches the cold metal and comes back up again as it leaves. And then she lifts the pipe and puts the cold end of it to her mouth and blows once, not hard, a short controlled puff, like putting out one candle from a distance, and something extraordinary happens inside that lump of orange. A bubble opens in the middle of it. Not a hole, not damage, a space held open by the pressure of one human breath against the surface tension of something that was sand a week ago. It is not visible from outside, not at first, but it is there. A small pocket of her own breath, sealed inside molten glass. And from this moment on, everything she does to that lump is a conversation between the air inside it and the shape of the glass around it. The furnace door goes up, and the light that comes out of it is the color of the inside of a star, and she puts the whole thing back in without flinching, because after 20 years your face knows exactly how long it can be there. She heats it again. She turns it. She blows again, longer this time, and the whole mass swells slowly outward like something breathing in. She sits down at the bench with the pipe laid across the 2 steel arms of it, one end resting where her left hand can keep it moving, turning constantly with her left hand, shaping with a wet wooden block held in her right, and the shape appears out of nowhere the way it always does. A curve, a shoulder, a neck, and then, at the end, the opening, the lip, flared out with a tool while the whole thing spins, so that what was a sealed bubble becomes something you can pour into and out of, the part that makes it a vessel, rather than a sealed bulb of glass with a private breath inside it. There is a moment near the end that she has never got tired of. The jug is finished, and it is still the color of embers, and it looks soft and dangerous. And then it goes into the annealing oven to cool over many hours, and in the morning it is a cold, clear, ordinary object sitting on a shelf, and it is impossible to believe it was ever liquid. Everyone who works with glass says the same thing about that. You never stop finding it strange. She was asked once by an apprentice, a serious young man, who wanted the theory of everything before he touched anything, what the hardest part was. She thought about it while she worked, which annoyed him. "You are thinking of it wrong," she said eventually. "You think I am making glass into a bowl. I am not. I am making a space and putting a skin on it." He did not understand a word of it. She could tell without looking up. "Look at it," she said, nodding at a jug cooling on the shelf. "What is that?" "It is the shape of air. All I did was put a wall around the shape of air at very high temperature in about 4 minutes. If you take away the air, there is no jug. If you take away the glass, there is no jug. Neither of them is the jug." The apprentice said, "So which comes first?" And she said, "Neither. They arrived together, in the same 4 minutes, out of the same breath. That is the whole trade." He worked with her for 3 years, and it was that sentence he took away, not any of the technique, because it turns out to be true of the whole trade, once you see it. A wine glass is the shape of air on a stem. A window pane is the one case where the glass is trying to be invisible so that the space on both sides can be a single space. A bottle is a shape of air with a neck on it, so that you can control how fast something enters and leaves. And in every case, the thing that people buy, the thing they pick up and turn over in the light and pay money for, is the wall around a nothing. Come back now, gently, to your own room, to the pillow and the dark and the weight of the blanket, and your own breathing going quietly on. Here is the line. Form is emptiness. In most translations, it is 4 words, and it has been carved into stone and painted onto scrolls and argued over in monasteries for 15 centuries. And it sounds, the first time you hear it, like a denial of the world, like someone saying, the things you see are not really there. It is not saying that. Let us take the glass blower's jug and go slowly. The jug is real. You could pour water from it this evening. You could drop it on a stone floor and break it and cut your hand on a piece of it, and the blood would be real too. And there is no jug essence in there anywhere. Take the glass on its own, and you have a puddle of silica, not a jug. Take the air on its own, and you have the air of the room, which is not a jug either. The jug exists in the relation between them, a shape of air with a skin on it, arriving all at once, made of a breath and 4 minutes and a furnace that has not gone out. Its form is the shape of its emptiness. Those are not 2 things standing next to each other. They are one event, described from 2 sides. That is what the line is saying. And notice what has not happened. Nothing has been taken away from the jug. Nobody has said that it is an illusion, or that it does not matter, or that a wise person would refuse to drink from it. The jug is exactly as real as it was before we look closely at it. The only thing that has changed is that we can no longer find a solid, separate jug thing inside it, standing on its own, independent of the breath and the glass and the woman and the heat. That is what empty means in this text. Empty of separate, independent, self-standing existence. It is a technical term, in other words, and it has been badly served by the English word chosen to carry it. If the early translators had settled on openness or unfixedness, or even made of other things, a great deal of unnecessary gloom could have been avoided. But emptiness is the word we have, and it is too late now, and there is something in the starkness of it that is probably good for us anyway. Not empty of being, empty of being on its own. Now let us do the harder thing and turn that towards something in your own life gently, because it is 1 o'clock in the morning and this is not an argument. It is a way of getting some room around what is heavy. Whatever is troubling you tonight has a shape. It feels like a thing. It has a name, a situation, a person, a fear, a failure. And the mind holds it as an object solid all the way through, sitting in you like a stone in a bag. But go and look at it the way she looks at a jug. Where does it end? Where is the edge of it? Follow it outward and you find it is made of other things, of what somebody said, and how tired you were when they said it, and something that happened years earlier that gave that sentence its weight, and the state of your body this week, and 100 conditions running back into your life and out of it into other people's. Nothing you can point at is only itself. Pull on any thread of tonight's trouble, and half your life comes with it, and half of other people's. Follow it inward, and you find the same. There is no core. There is no dense little kernel at the center of the trouble. That is the trouble itself. It is relations all the way down, the way the jug is glass and breath and heat and skill and 4 minutes. And this is not a trick to make it go away. It will not go away tonight. The jug does not vanish when you understand how it was made, and it is not a way of telling yourself that the difficulty is not real. That would be the cheap version, and it does not work, and anyone who has tried it at 4 in the morning knows exactly how well it does not work. The jug is real. Your trouble is real. Nobody is asking you to pretend otherwise. But something does change, and it is the thing this entire text exists for. A solid object has no give in it anywhere. You can only push against it or be crushed by it. That is what a difficulty feels like at 3 in the morning. A wall, complete, immovable, and you on one side of it. A thing made of conditions has room in it, handles even, places to take hold that are not the thing itself, not a solution. Room, places where the light gets in, points where you can see that it did not have to be exactly this and will not stay exactly this, because it is not one thing but a great many things holding a shape together for a while. That is the gift the line is offering, not the disappearance of the world, space inside the things that are pressing on you. And notice, this is worth saying, because it is where the relief actually comes from, that you do not have to do the analysis for it to work. You do not have to sit in the dark listing the conditions that produced your difficulty like a student writing an essay. That would be one more piece of work at an hour when you have none left. It is enough to have the idea sitting in the room with you. This is not one solid thing. That alone changes how it feels to lie next to it. There is a reason the Sutra puts this line first, before all the ones that strip everything away. If you meet those later lines without this one, they sound like demolition. With it, they sound like windows being opened. Let us feel it in the plainest way there is, and then rest. Bring your attention to the breath and to what it actually does. You breathe in, and in doing that, a space opens inside you. The ribs lift, the belly rises, and a volume appears where a moment ago there was less of one. Air comes into it, from the room, from the whole sky. And then you let it go, and the space closes, and what was inside you is outside you again, and indistinguishable from the rest of the air in the room. Notice that you cannot say where your breath stops being the room's air and starts being yours. There is no moment of ownership. It arrives, it is briefly involved in keeping you alive, and it leaves. There is no border. There is only a shape that opens and closes, and something passing through it, over and over, all night, all your life. You have been doing this since the first minute of your life and will do it until the last one. And not one of those breaths has ever belonged to you. You are the glass blower and the jug at once, a shape of air with a skin on it, arriving all at once, made of a great many conditions that you did not arrange and could not have arranged. Let the breath come in and open a space, and let it go out and close it. Let the shoulders drop back into the bed. Let the hands lie open. Let the jaw come apart, and the tongue rest low, and the space between the eyebrows go smooth and wide. There is nothing solid to hold on to tonight. There never was. Feel how much of you is space. The chest, opening and closing. The throat, which is a passage. The mouth. Even the bones, which look solid and are mostly scaffolding and gaps. Nothing here is as dense as it feels. Let us rest here for a while. When you are ready, we will go on together. Because the sutra does not stop there, and the second half of the line is the one that saves it from becoming exactly the bleak thing people are afraid of. Having said that form is emptiness, it immediately turns the sentence round and says the other thing. Emptiness is form, which means this openness we have been talking about is not somewhere else. It is not a truer reality behind the world, and it is not a place you go when you have finally seen through everything. It is here, as the world, as this, as the jug on the shelf and the person in the bed. There is a child on a hillside being told that there is nothing there, standing in the middle of it, entirely unconvinced. Let us go and stand with her. The rain came over while they were still a mile from the car, which is the way of it in that country. You can watch the weather crossing the valley towards you for 20 minutes and still be surprised when it arrives. There were 4 of them out that afternoon, walking back from a piece of coast they went to 2 or 3 times a year. A man in his 70s, his daughter, and 2 children, one of whom was 7 and had opinions. The sun stayed out to the west, low and yellow, in the gap under the edge of the cloud, which is the whole trick of it, though none of them were thinking about that. And when they came over the shoulder of the hill, the whole eastern side of the valley had a rainbow standing in it, complete, both feet on the ground, so bright that the inner band was doubled. The 7-year-old stopped dead in the middle of the track, with the rain coming sideways into her face, and said nothing at all for about 10 seconds, which was unusual. She had seen rainbows before, the way children have, in books, in the corner of the sky, mentioned by adults. She had never seen one like this, arriving all at once, standing across a valley she knew, with 1 foot planted in a field she had walked in. "It's landed in Morgan's field," she said. "Look." "It looks like it," said her grandfather. "Can we go and stand in it?" And that is where the afternoon turned into something she remembered for 50 years, because he did not say no, and he did not say yes, and what he said instead was, "You can, but it will not be there when you get there." She did not believe him for a second. She was 7, and it was standing right there with his foot in a field she could name. She set off down the track at a run. They let her go. It was a field they knew, and there was a wall the whole way down, and she was a child who could be trusted not to do anything stupid with a gait. And the 3 of them came down behind her at walking pace, and the rain kept coming, and the sun kept shining, and the rainbow kept standing exactly where it was, over Morgan's field, waiting for her, until she got to Morgan's field and stood in it, panting, in the exact spot she had been aiming at for the last 10 minutes. And then, of course, it was over the next one, not further along the same arc, somewhere else entirely, standing in a place she had just come from, having apparently moved while she was not looking at it. She stopped in the wet grass and turned round twice, looking for it, hood down, hair flat to her head, in the particular fury of a child who's been told something she did not want to be true and has just proved it herself. Her grandfather came up eventually, in no hurry, with his collar up. "Where has it gone?" "Nowhere," he said. "It has not gone anywhere. It was never in the field." And then he explained it, badly and roughly, in the way that a man who left school at 14 explains optics to a 7-year-old, that it is made of sunlight and raindrops, and that the light goes into each drop and bends and comes back out at an angle, and that the angle is always the same, which is why they are always the same shape. "So where is it then?" she said. "It has to be somewhere." "It is between you and the rain," he said. "There is no rainbow out there in the field. There is rain in the field, and sun behind you, and your eyes in the middle. Move your eyes, and it moves. There is a rainbow for you, and a different one for me, standing 8 feet away, and neither of us can go and stand in ours. She thought about that for a while in the rain, which was going down her neck by then, and neither of them suggested moving. And then she said the thing that he told people about for the rest of his life, because he had not been expecting it from a 7-year-old. She said, "But I can see it." "Yes," he said, "you can see it. So it's real." "Yes," he said, "it is completely real. It is just not a thing you can go to." He was not a man who went in for lessons, and he did not add anything to it. He got out a handkerchief, wiped the rain off his face, and said something about the state of the gate at the top, which had been hanging off its hinge since the spring. They walked back up to the car. The rainbow stayed with them the whole way, moving as they moved, always over the next field, and when they got to the top and looked back, the light had changed, and it was gone. And here is the part she did not learn until much later, and which changed the shape of that afternoon in her memory. Some years afterward, walking in the same country, she was caught in a shower with the sun low behind her, standing on open ground in the rain, and her brother, half a mile off on the opposite slope, told her afterward that he had watched a rainbow the whole time. A bright one, standing in the rain, with one foot down in the ground more or less exactly where she had been. He had watched it for several minutes, he said, and had assumed she could see it too, and had been puzzled that she did not seem to be looking at anything. She had been standing inside it, and there had been nothing there at all, and it had been perfectly, brilliantly visible to somebody else. She told her own children the same thing on a different hillside 30 years later, and got the same objection almost word for word, which delighted her. And she noticed, telling it, that the explanation had not spoiled a single rainbow for her in 3 decades. She still stops. She still says look out loud in an empty car, knowing exactly what it is made of, and knowing it is not out there, and knowing that hers is not her brother's. None of that has taken one particle off the top of it. Come back now, gently, to your own room, to the dark and the weight of the blanket, and the breath moving quietly in and out. Here is the second half of the line, and it is the one that keeps this teaching honest. Emptiness is form. The Sutra says it in both directions, deliberately, one after the other. Form is emptiness, and then immediately, before anybody can get comfortable, emptiness is form. And the reason it does that is to block a particular mistake which every generation makes, and which is very tempting at 1 in the morning. The mistake is to hear the first half and decide that emptiness is the real thing, and the world is a sort of appearance laid over it. That behind or beneath all this ordinary business, the difficult day, the body, the people, the bills, there's a vast, serene, truer reality, and that the spiritual project is to get through to it, and that everything here is a distraction to be seen through. That is a beautiful idea, and it is not what the text says, because the moment you make emptiness into a truer somewhere else, you have made it into a thing, a place, a destination with a view, and then you spend your life trying to get there, which is exactly the grasping the whole text was written to loosen. So the sutra turns the sentence round. Emptiness is form. The openness is not behind the world. It is the world. It is not underneath your life. It is your life. There is nowhere else to go and nothing to get through to. The rainbow is the cleanest example I know. Go and look for the rainbow thing, and you will not find it. There is no object standing in Morgan's field. It has no location you can walk to, no substance, no back, no edges of its own. It depends entirely on conditions, the sun at a particular angle, the rain in a particular place, and remarkably, on exactly where your eyes are. It is not there without you. Two people standing side by side are looking at two different rainbows made of two different sets of raindrops, and neither of them will ever know it. Completely empty in the Sutra's technical sense, not standing on its own, not findable as an independent thing anywhere in that valley. And it is right there. You can photograph it. Everyone in the valley can see one. It stops traffic on a motorway. People come out of buildings for it. Children run down hills toward it in the rain, and their grandparents follow at walking pace. It is one of the most reliably beautiful things that happens on this planet, and nobody has ever felt cheated by learning what it is made of. That is emptiness and form arriving together in the sky, in front of everyone, about 40 times a year. And notice how completely untroubled we all are by it. Nobody has ever come down off a hill in a state of existential distress because a rainbow turned out to be an event rather than an object. Nobody feels betrayed. Children who are told exactly what it is go on running toward it anyway, and are not disappointed when they arrive, because by then they have got wet and seen a heron and forgotten what they were running for. We already know how to hold something as real and unfindable at the same time. We do it every time the sky does this. The only difficulty is doing it with our own lives. Nothing has been taken away. That is the thing to hold on to tonight, if you hold on to anything. Understanding how something is made does not subtract it, not one bit of it, ever. The grandfather could explain the angle of refraction and still stand in a wet field looking at it with his collar up. Knowing that a jug is a shape of air does not make it stop holding water. And knowing that your life is made of conditions, that there is no solid separate kernel in the middle of you, or in the middle of your difficulty, or in the middle of the day you have just had, does not make any of it less real, or less yours, or less worth caring about. It only means there is no wall. And it means something else that matters at this hour, which is worth saying directly. You do not have to get anywhere tonight. There is no better state you are failing to reach, while lying here in an ordinary body, in an ordinary dark room, being tired. Whatever this teaching is pointing at is not somewhere further in. It is not deeper than where you already are. If it were, it would be one more thing to strive toward, and you have quite enough of those, and none of them have ever helped anyone fall asleep. There is a version of spirituality, and it is common, and it does real harm, that uses this teaching as an exit. Nothing is ultimately real, so nothing needs attending to. The relationship, the responsibility, the difficult conversation, the grief, all appearance, all to be seen through, all beneath the notice of someone who has understood. The reversal in this line closes that door. If emptiness is form, then there is no vantage point above your actual life from which to look down on it. There is only the washing up, and the person in the next room, and the thing you have been putting off, and this bed, and this hour, which is either a disappointment or an enormous relief, depending on how tired you are. Let us sit with that for a moment, in the plainest possible way. Look at the room around you, not with your eyes necessarily. You may not want to open them. Just be aware of it. The dark, the shape of the space, the furniture you know is there, The openness we have been talking about all night is not somewhere behind that. It is not underneath the floorboards or on the far side of the ceiling. It is this. The room, exactly as it is what emptiness looks like from the inside. And the same is true of the body you are lying in, and the tiredness in it, and the breath going in and out, and the thought that just went past, and the weight in your chest if there is one tonight. Not a veil over something better. This, the dark room, the tired body, the night that has not gone the way you wanted. There is no other version of it waiting behind a door somewhere for people who understand the text properly. Let the shoulders come down. Let the arms be heavy. Let the hands lie open on the blanket. Let the breath arrive and leave without instruction. And notice that it too is a thing made of conditions. The air of the room, the movement of your ribs, 100 processes you did not arrange. And that it is entirely real, and that it is keeping you alive at this moment while you lie in the dark, listening to a voice. There is nowhere else to be tonight. There is nothing behind this to reach. Let the jaw come apart. Let the face soften. Let the whole weight of you be given to the bed, which is holding you as reliably as it has all evening. Let us rest here for a while. When you are ready, we will go on together, because we have used the word empty a great many times now, and it is time to say precisely what it means, because it does not mean what it sounds like in English, and the actual meaning is warmer than anyone expects. Empty of what exactly? There is a village hall on a Tuesday evening, and about 30 people who cannot individually sing very well. And something is about to happen in that room that has no location and makes strangers cry. Let us go and stand at the back. The hall has a floor that was varnished in about 1980 and a heater at one end that makes a noise. And every Tuesday from September to June at 7:30, about 30 people come in out of the dark and take their coats off. They are not singers, most of them. That is the first thing to understand about this room. There is a retired postman with a good ear and no reading. There is a woman in her 80s who has been in this choir since it started, and who sings a semitone under everything, and whom nobody has ever had the heart to speak to about it. There is a man who joined after his divorce because his sister made him, and who now organizes the rota. There are 2 teenagers who came because of a school thing, and then simply stayed. There is a farmer who arrives late in work clothes about 1 week in 3. Individually, they are entirely unremarkable, and would tell you so themselves at some length. Several of them are, in the plain sense of the word, not very good. The conductor is a woman in her 50s who does this for very little money, and who has, over 9 years, stopped trying to make them into a different choir and started working with the one she has. She has a way of stopping them that nobody minds. She does not say that was wrong. She says again from the 3rd bar, and they go again from the 3rd bar. And by about the 4th time, nobody can remember what was wrong with it. They rehearse for an hour and a half. Most of it is unglamorous. The altos are flat again. Somebody has lost their place. The tenors are 3 men, and one of them has a cold. And there is a passage in the middle that has gone wrong every week since February, for reasons nobody can identify. And then, sometime around 8:30, usually without warning, it happens. They start a piece they know well, one they have sung for years that needs no explaining, and about 8 bars in, without anybody doing anything different, the thing arrives. The sound comes up off 30 ordinary people and becomes something that is not any of them. It fills the hall. It has a weight and a shape, and it moves. The postman feels it come up through the floor. The woman who sings a semitone under is, at that moment, part of a chord that is entirely in tune, because the sound is not the sum of the voices. Something else happens when they combine, and it happens above and between and around them, and every one of them can hear it. It is a physical thing, and it is the part that people who have never sung in a group do not know about. When a chord is genuinely in tune, the sound stops coming from 30 separate places and starts coming from the room itself. It gets bigger than the number of people making it. There are overtones in the air that nobody in that hall is singing. Notes that simply appear, made by the other notes rubbing against each other, ringing off a ceiling in a village nobody has heard of. The conductor takes her hands down slowly. Nobody says anything for a second. Then the postman makes a joke, because 30 English people cannot sit inside a silence like that, and everybody laughs, and the moment closes over. One of them said in the car park once, half embarrassed, "I have no idea why that got me. I was on the alto line. I was mostly counting." And here's the thing. You cannot point at it. Go and look for the choir in that room. It is not in the postman. Take him out and it continues. It is not in the conductor. She is not making a sound. It is not in the notes on the paper, which sat in a cupboard all summer and produced nothing. It is not in the hall, which is empty on a Wednesday. It is not in any voice, and it is not in the sum of the voices, and there is no location anywhere in that building where the choir is, and it is completely real. People cry at it. It does not happen every week. That should be said, because it would be dishonest to suggest that 30 people in a village hall are having transcendent experiences every Tuesday from September to June. Most weeks it is fine. Some weeks it is a slog, and everyone goes home slightly flat in both senses. But it happens often enough that all of them keep coming, including in February, including in the rain, including the farmer who arrives late in work clothes and stands at the back and does not take his coat off for the first 20 minutes. They sang at a funeral in March, one of their own. The woman in her 80s, in the end, who had been there since the beginning. The family asked, which nobody had expected, and the conductor said yes before she had worked out how they would manage it. The choir stood at the front of a cold church with the numbers wrong, because they were one down and 3 others could not come, and they sang something simple that she had liked. And a man at the back, who had come because he worked with the sun and felt he ought to, who had no interest in choral music of any kind and had been thinking mainly about the traffic, found halfway through that his face was wet and could not have told anybody why. Nothing in that church was the cause of that, not any voice in particular, not the words which were ordinary, not the acoustic, though it helped. It arrived in the relations between things. 30-odd people, a text, a room, a coffin, a shared history nobody had to explain, and a man who happened to be standing at the back on a cold morning with his own losses in him, which is what the whole thing found and touched, empty of any separate self-existence, real enough to change a stranger's mourning. He never mentioned it to anyone. He went back to work in the afternoon, but he thought about it on and off for years, in the way people do about things that happen to them sideways. Come back now, gently, to your own room, to the pillow and the dark, and your own breathing going quietly on. So, empty of what exactly? Let us say it clearly now, because we have been circling it all night. The Sutra is not saying that things do not exist. It is saying that nothing exists on its own terms. Nothing anywhere has its own separate self-standing being, independent of everything else, findable in isolation. Everything that exists in relationship, arising out of conditions, held in a web of other things, and dissolving when those conditions change. The tradition has a name for this way of seeing, and it is worth hearing once. Dependent arising. Things arise depending on other things. That is the whole of it, and emptiness is simply the other side of that same coin. To say a thing is empty is to say, it is here because of everything else. Notice how far that is from bleakness. Empty in English suggests a hole where something ought to be. But what the word is pointing at is closer to connected all the way through. So thoroughly related to everything else that no separate edge can be found anywhere. The choir is not less real for being unfindable. It is more real than any single voice in it. And the same is true of a family, a language, a friendship, a town, a piece of music, a marriage, an evening that goes well. None of the things that matter most to human beings are objects, not one. You cannot point at any of them. They are all choirs, and nobody has ever thought that made them less valuable. Nobody has ever said, my marriage turns out not to be a physical object located somewhere, therefore it does not matter. The unfindability is not a defect. It is simply what important things are like. And the same is true of the thing that is heavy on you tonight. That is worth taking slowly, because it is where the room comes from. Whatever it is, go and look for it the way we looked for the choir. It is not in one place. It is not the situation on its own. Other people have been through that situation, and it did not do this to them. It is not your reaction on its own. You have reacted differently to the same thing in a better week. It is not the memory, or the tiredness, or the hour, or the things somebody said, or the state of your body. And it is all of them, arriving together, holding a shape. A chord, not a stone. And chords change when any one voice changes. Some of the voices in this one will change by themselves before morning. The tiredness will, certainly. The hour will. Nothing has to be solved for the sound to be different, in the way that nothing had to be solved in that hall for 8 bars to arrive that were not there in the first hour. And now let us turn it, gently, toward you. You are also not findable in that way. Go and look for the separate self-standing you, the you that would still be you with everything else stripped away, the essential core underneath the relationships and the history and the body and the language you happen to think in. Look honestly, without hurrying, and you will find something very like the choir, not nothing. A great many things in relation, a body made of other bodies' food, a way of speaking learned from people who are mostly dead, opinions absorbed from a place you did not choose to be born in, habits shaped by 100 people, kindnesses in you that somebody put there. There is no smaller, truer thing at the middle of it, standing on its own. And here is what that means at 2 in the morning, which is the only reason we are talking about it. If you are made of relations, then you are not alone in the way that the small hours tell you that you are. The feeling of being a sealed separate unit, isolated behind your own eyes, is one of the most convincing sensations a human being has, and it gets sharper at night, and it is not accurate. You are not a sealed unit. You are more like the sound in that hall, happening between things, made of everything that has touched you, connected in 1,000 directions to people who are asleep somewhere right now and are still, at this moment, part of what you are made of. That is not a poetic consolation. It is the plain structure of the thing, and it is checkable. Go and look for the sealed unit, and you will not find one, in exactly the way you would not find the choir. The isolation is real as a feeling. It is simply not accurate as a description. Those two can be true at once, and knowing it does not make the feeling go away tonight, and it does put a little air around it. The people who shaped you are in you at this hour, whether or not you are in touch with them. The kindness you received 20 years ago is still operating in how you speak to a stranger. You are constituted by relations that do not stop existing because it is dark and you are by yourself in a room. Let us rest here for a while, and let that be true without doing anything about it. You do not have to feel connected in order for it to be the case. That is worth saying plainly at this hour, because a tired mind will hear all this and turn it into one more thing it is failing at. I should feel less alone, and I do not. Never mind the feeling. The structure holds either way, whether or not you can sense it from inside a dark room at 1 in the morning. Listen to whatever your room is doing, not one sound, all of them at once. The building, the outside, the small hum a quiet room has, your own breathing. Notice that you cannot separate them cleanly. What you are hearing is not a set of sounds. It is one composite thing, arriving all together, which would be different if any part of it were missing. That is what everything is like, all the way down. Not a warehouse of separate objects standing next to each other. A great many things arriving together, continuously, and being received as one. The night is a chord. The room is a chord. The body lying in it is a chord. And so is the breath moving through it. And so, for what it is worth at this hour, is the tiredness and the heaviness and everything else you brought to bed. Let the shoulders come down. Let the arms be heavy. Let the hands lie open on the blanket, holding nothing at all. Let the breath come in from the room and go back out into it. There is nothing separate here. There is nothing to hold apart. Let the jaw come apart. Let the face soften. Let the whole weight of you be handed over to the bed. When you are ready, we will go on together. Because now we come to the strangest passage in the whole text, and the one that frightens people, and it is time to face it directly. Having said that form is emptiness and emptiness is form, the sutra begins to take things away. No form, it says, no feeling, no perception, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no suffering and no end of suffering, no wisdom and nothing to attain. Line after line after line of no. It sounds like the world being demolished. It is not. It is somebody being taught to let go of the side of the pool. There is an old swimming teacher in a cold municipal bars on a Tuesday morning, standing in the shallow end with a class of adults who are all far too frightened for their age. Let us go and watch her work. The pool smells of chlorine and the tiles are cold, and the class is at 9:30 on a Tuesday, which is a time chosen deliberately, because at 9:30 on a Tuesday, there is nobody else in the building. That matters more than anything else about the arrangement. These are adults who cannot swim, and the reason most of them cannot swim is not that they never got round to it. It is that at some point it became a thing, and then it became a thing they did not talk about, And then it became a thing they arranged their whole lives around. Declining boats, staying on beaches, being vague at hotels. There are 6 of them today, which is the most she will take, because 6 is the number of people she can keep her eye on while standing in the water with them. The teacher is in her 60s and has been doing this for 30 years, and she is in the water with them, always, because she long ago worked out that a person standing on the side telling you to relax is worse than useless. The man we are watching is 56. He is in every other area of his life a competent person. He runs a department of 11 people. He has a grown daughter who taught herself to swim at 11 and cannot understand what the difficulty is. He is standing in 4 feet of water at the shallow end with both hands on the rail, and he has been standing more or less like that for most of 3 weeks. Nobody has told him to stop. Nobody has told him he is doing it wrong. She does not rush him. That is the first thing to say about her, and it is the reason people who have failed at 3 other classes end up in hers. She has never once said there is nothing to be afraid of. She knows there is something to be afraid of, not the water, which is harmless, but the letting go, which is not nothing at all, when you have organized 4 decades around not doing it. For the first fortnight, she did not ask him to let go at all. They put their faces in the water, they blew bubbles, which everybody feels foolish about and everybody needs. They walked from one side to the other, which sounds like nothing and is not nothing when the water is at your chest and you have spent 40 years believing it wants you. But this morning she comes and stands next to him, a foot away in the water. How many fingers have you got on that rail? He looks down through the water at his own hands, which is not something he has done before. 10. Try 8. He takes his thumbs off. He's aware of how ridiculous that is and does it anyway, and stands there with 8 fingers on a rail and nothing whatsoever happens. Now try 4. 4. Then 2, which takes a while. And then, some minutes later, 1. 1 index finger hooked over a metal rail in a municipal swimming pool. And by now he is laughing slightly, in the particular way frightened people laugh, and she is not making a thing of it. You know what I'm going to say next? Yes. You do not have to do it today, she says. There is no hurry on this at all. There is a pause that goes on for some time. She does not fill it. Somewhere in the building a door goes, and then he takes his finger off the rail. Nothing happens. That is the whole event. He stands in 4 feet of water at the shallow end of a swimming pool, holding nothing, and the floor is where it has always been, and the water comes up to his chest, and it is entirely uninteresting, and he cries a bit and pretends he's got chlorine in his eyes. The other 5 in the class do not applaud because she has trained them not to, and because every one of them is on their own version of that rail and knows exactly what it cost. Later, weeks later, she gets him onto his back. That is the harder thing, because floating requires you to do the exact opposite of everything panic wants. Panic wants you to make yourself small and rigid and to reach for the edge. Panic wants you to lift your head, which drops your legs, to hold your breath, which is exactly backwards, to reach for something solid, of which there is none. And a rigid body sinks. A body that lets go lengthens and does nothing at all floats, reliably, boringly, by simple physics, in every pool on earth. She has one hand under his back the first time. Then she says something she has said several thousand times in 30 years, and takes the hand away without announcing it, and he lies there on the surface of the water with his ears under and the strip lights above him, and no idea that she is no longer touching him. When he realizes, he does not sink. That is the part he tells people about afterward. He had assumed the realization would be the thing that dropped him. And what she says to him that morning, standing beside him in the shallow end while he gets his breath, is the sentence that this whole chapter exists for. The rail was never holding you up, she says. The water is holding you up. The rail is just what you were holding. He swims now, badly, and only breaststroke, and he will not go out of his depth in the sea. He is not going to become a swimmer in any sense that would impress his daughter. But he went on a boat in the summer for the first time in his adult life, and did not spend the whole of it working out where the life jackets were. The teacher would tell you that this is the entire job, not producing swimmers, removing one finger at a time over months the thing a person is holding, and letting them find out that what they were afraid of was the letting go and not the water. Come back now, gently, to your own room, to the dark and the weight of the blanket, and your own breathing going quietly on. Now we can go into the strangest passage in the Sutra, and it will not frighten you, because here is what it does. Having said that form is emptiness, and emptiness is form, the text begins to take everything away, and not just the obvious things. It goes through the whole inventory, methodically, one after another, putting no in front of each one. No form, no feeling, no perception, no impulse, no consciousness. Everything a person is made of, gone. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Every sense gone. And then everything the senses meet, no sight, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, gone as well. And then it does something that must have been genuinely shocking to the people who first heard it, because it turns on Buddhism itself. No ignorance, it says, and no end of ignorance. No old age and death, and no end of old age and death, which is the tradition's own central chain of causation, denied line by line. No suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, which is the Four Noble Truths, the absolute foundation, the first thing the Buddha is recorded as teaching, taken off the wall and set down. And then, at the end of the demolition, no wisdom and nothing to attain. Read coldly, on a page, that is a bleak few lines. If somebody read that to you in a hard voice with no context, it would sound like a text saying that nothing is real and nothing matters, and everything anyone has ever taught you is worthless. It is doing the opposite, and the swimming pool is exactly why. Every one of those things is a rail, not a lie, not a worthless thing. A rail, something real, that people hold, that feels like the reason they have not gone under, and that is not, in fact, what is holding them up. Look at what it takes away, in order. First, the things you naturally grip, your body, your senses, the world they show you. Then the things a spiritual person grips, the teachings, the map, the diagnosis, the path, the progress, the attainment. That last group is the important one, and it is why this text is a fierce as well as a gentle thing. It is not attacking the outside world. It is turning on its own tradition and removing the handrails that people had begun to hang on to. Because the moment a teaching becomes something to grip, it has stopped doing what it was for. Imagine the effect of that on somebody who had spent 20 years in a monastery. You have learned the lists, you have memorized the stages, You have a clear private picture of where you are on the path and how far there is left to go. And then this short text stands up in the middle of the hall and says, "And there is no path and no wisdom and nothing to attain." That is not skepticism. Whoever composed it plainly took the teachings extremely seriously. It is something more surgical, a recognition that human beings will make a handrail out of absolutely anything, including the instructions for letting go of handrails. And it is not saying you have no eyes. Please hear that clearly, because it is the whole misunderstanding. You have eyes. They are shut at the moment. The text is not making a claim about anatomy. It is doing what it did with the jug and the rainbow and the choir, going to look for the separate self-standing thing called an I and finding, as always, relations arising together and nothing standing on its own. Not, there is no I, but nothing to grip here either. Not even this. Not even the categories we ourselves gave you to hold on to. Especially not those, in fact. Those are the ones people grip hardest because they were handed over by someone trustworthy. The rail was never holding you up. The water is holding you up. The water has been holding you up the entire time, including through all the weeks you were standing at the shallow end with 10 fingers on a metal bar, absolutely certain that letting go would be the end of you. And what is the water in this analogy? The text does not say, and I'm not going to pretend to know, and anybody who tells you confidently is selling something. But we can say what people report. They report, and they have reported it consistently for a very long time, in every language this text has travelled into, that when the gripping stops, nothing collapses. The world is still there. The floor is where it always was. The breath goes on. The day continues, and is, if anything, slightly easier to be in. That is the entire promise, and it is a modest one, and it happens to be true. No transformation, no transcendence, just the thing you are bracing against does not arrive. And there is one more thing worth saying, because this passage does unsettle some people, and it is better to name it than to pretend. If the list of negations makes something in you go cold, if there is a moment where the floor seems to drop and the whole thing feels less like openness and more like nothing at all, then stop. Do not push into it at 1 a.m, on no sleep, alone in the dark. That is not the hour for it, and this text has waited 1,500 years and can wait until you have had breakfast. Come back instead to the entirely reliable things, the weight of the blanket, the warmth where your body meets the bed, the sound of the room, the next breath. None of those are being denied by anything in this text, and all of them are here. So let us do a very small version of it now, and then rest. Notice what you are holding. Not metaphorically at first, actually. Is there tension in your hands, your jaw, the muscles across your shoulders, or the ones either side of your spine that have been quietly bracing since you lay down? Those are your fingers on the rail. Take a couple of them off. Not all of them. Nobody's asking for all of them tonight. And a person who has been holding on for years does not let go in one evening because a voice suggested it. 2 fingers, that is plenty. Let the hands soften. Let the jaw come apart. Let the shoulders drop back into the bed. And now notice, as he did, that nothing has happened. Nothing has fallen. You are exactly as held as you were a moment ago, because the thing that was holding you was never the tension. The bed is holding you. It has been holding you all night, without effort, without being thanked, and without any contribution from the tension in your shoulders. It will go on holding you whether or not you are gripping, and it does not require your help, and it never once asked you to brace. Let the breath come in and go out, and let the out-breath be the longer of the two without your arranging it. There is nothing to hold on to tonight, not even the Sutra, not even the teaching. If any of this has become something to grip, let that go as well. It will still be there in the morning, and you are allowed to be a person lying in a dark room understanding nothing at all. Let us rest here for a while. When you are ready, we will go on together, because the last item in that long list of negations is the strangest of all, and it is also the most restful sentence in the whole of Buddhist literature, and it is worth an hour on its own. Nothing to attain. There is a calligraphy teacher somewhere, and a student who has been trying for 4 months to make one particular stroke perfectly, and the two of them are about to have a short conversation about it. Let us go and sit at the edge of that room. The room has a long table down one side of it and paper everywhere, and the smell is of ink, which is a smell that people who have never been in such a room do not expect. Not chemical, something closer to soot and glue and a little pine. There are 6 students at the table. It is an evening class, and it costs very little, and it runs from 7 until 9. Most of them are here because they like the look of it and are enjoying themselves in a mild way, and there is one who is not enjoying himself at all, and who is the best of them, and who would be astonished to hear it. He is in his 40s. He has been coming for 7 months, every Wednesday, never missing one, arriving early to set out his own paper. And for the last 4 of those months, he has been working on a single stroke. It is not, in itself, a complicated stroke. Nobody would look at it and be impressed by the difficulty. It is one of the first things anybody learns, a horizontal line drawn left to right, with a particular way of entering and holding and finishing. In a good hand, it looks completely effortless and slightly alive, as though the brush had merely been passing through and decided to leave something behind. His are dead. He knows they are dead. That is the whole of the difficulty, and it is worse than not knowing. He is not a man who cannot tell. He has a good eye. He can see instantly whether a stroke is alive or not, which is exactly why he has been at this for 4 months. He can see it in the teachers and in the book, and he can see the absence of it in every single one of his own, and he cannot find the door. He has read about it, which has not helped. He has watched slow-motion video of a master doing it, which has helped even less, and has given him a great deal of unusable detail about wrist angles. He has tried everything, holding the brush higher, holding it lower, slower, faster, more ink, less ink, different paper, standing rather than sitting. He has done 400 of them in a week. He has done them at 6 in the morning before work, which he believes is when his mind is clearest. And the teacher, a woman in her 70s, who has been doing this since she was 6 years old, and who says almost nothing during the class beyond hello and good night, has watched all of it for 4 months and offered him no correction whatsoever. This evening she comes over and stands behind him for a while, which she has done perhaps twice in 7 months. He is aware of her there, and it makes the next 3 strokes worse than anything he has produced all year. Then she says, "May I have a look at the ones you have thrown away?" He has a pile of them. Everybody in the room has a pile. The sheets that go into the bin at the end. He hands it over, slightly embarrassed, because that is the failed work, and there is a great deal of it. She goes through it slowly at the end of the table, perhaps 100 sheets. She does not hurry, and nobody else in the room takes any notice, and the whole thing takes several minutes, during which he stands there feeling faintly ridiculous. And she pulls out 5 and puts them side by side. She lines them up carefully, square to the edge of the table. "These," she says. He comes round the table and looks, and they are alive. All 5 of them, unmistakably. He cannot understand it. They are unmistakably his, and unmistakably alive, and he has no memory of making any of them. "When did I do these?" he says. "You tell me. Look at the paper, not the ink." He looks at them for a long time, and then something occurs to him. 2 of them are at the very bottom of the pile, the first ones of the evening, before he had properly started, when he was loading the brush and testing the ink on a spare sheet. 1 is on the back of another sheet, which means he had picked up scrap paper without looking. 1 has a T-ring on it, brown and perfectly circular, cutting across the corner. Every single one of them was made when he was not making it. He stands there with his hands on the table and does not say anything for a while, because there is a particular silence that arrives when a thing you have been working at from the wrong direction for 4 months turns round and looks at you. "I was not trying," he says, and it comes out sounding like an accusation, mostly against himself. "No. So I should not try." "No," she says. "That is the other mistake, and it takes people about a year." She sits down on the stool at the end of the table, which she does not usually do, and which makes 2 of the other students look up. "You will practice every day. You will do the 400. Nothing about the work changes, but you have been doing something else at the same time as the work all these months, and that is the thing that is killing them." She taps the alive ones. "You have been reaching for a stroke that is somewhere out in front of you, a good one, a better one than this one, and so every stroke you make is made by a man who is somewhere else, and it comes out looking like that. Then how am I supposed to—" "You cannot get there," she said. "There is nowhere to get to. There is only this brush and this paper and this arm tonight. When you finally believe that, the stroke will be alive, and you will not be able to take any credit for it, and that will annoy you for about 6 months." He did not solve it that evening. That is worth saying, because the version of this story in which he goes home and produces a perfect stroke is a lie, and anyone who has learned anything difficult knows it is a lie. He went home irritated. He did the 400. For several weeks, he did them while trying not to try, which is a special kind of hell, and produced the worst work of his life. And then sometime in the spring, he could not have told you when, he noticed that he had stopped checking each one against the idea of a good one. He was simply making marks on paper in an evening class, badly, with a brush he had grown fond of. The teacher never said anything about it. She never did. But he noticed, over the following months, that she had begun leaving him alone in a slightly different way. "Come back now, gently, to your own room, to the dark and the weight of the blanket, and the breath moving quietly in and out. Here is the line, and it is the last of the negations, and it is the one I would give you if you could take only one thing from tonight. No attainment, with nothing to attain. That is what the Sutra says, after it has stripped away everything else. Not, you have not attained it yet. Not, it is difficult, and few succeed. Nothing to attain, as in, there is no object out there, ahead of you that you are supposed to be acquiring. And I want to be careful because there are two ways to hear that, and one of them is useless. The useless way is nothing matters, so do nothing. That is the mistake the student jumped to immediately, so I should not try. And it is wrong, and the teacher was right to bat it away in 3 words. He still does the 400. Nothing about the work changes. What changes is the direction he is facing, because there is a particular kind of effort that has a hole in it, and almost every human being alive is doing it, and it is very likely part of why you are awake right now. It is the effort that is aimed at a future version of you, the person you will be when this is sorted out, when the money is steadier, when the work is recognized, when you have finally dealt with the thing, when you are calmer, wiser, thinner, kinder, more disciplined, less afraid. That person is always slightly ahead of you, never here, never reached, and never quite specified either, which is part of the trick. Everything you do is done in their service, and the strange consequence is that the actual life, this one tonight in this room, never quite gets attended to, because it is only ever the raw material for the better one. And here is the cruelty of it, which the calligraphy teacher had watched happen to students for 50 years. It does not work, not even on its own terms. The strokes come out dead, because they are made by a man who is somewhere else, and it exhausts people in a way that ordinary work does not. Ordinary work is tiring and then you stop. Reaching never stops. You carry it into the evening and into the weekend and into bed, because the future version of you is available for comparison at every hour of the day and is always slightly better than the one currently doing the living. That is a large part of what keeps people awake at night, not the day's tasks, the permanent low-grade sense of not having got there yet. Nothing to attain takes the whole apparatus away. It says, there is no destination version of you. There is no state you are supposed to reach, at which point this becomes a proper life rather than a rehearsal for one. What there is this: the brush, the paper, the arm tonight, the bed, the dark, the body, the breath. Now let me say what that means at this hour, as plainly as I can, because it is the most restful sentence I know. You are not a project. Sit with that for a moment rather than moving past it, because almost everything in modern life says otherwise. You have been sold relentlessly the idea that you are an unfinished thing requiring work, that there is a better version available with sufficient effort and the right system, and that arriving at it is more or less the point of being alive. This text, which is 15 centuries older than any of that, says something quite different, and says it in 4 words. You do not have to be further along than you are. You do not have to have understood this text. You do not have to be someone tomorrow who copes better than the person lying here now. Nothing is required of you between now and morning. Whatever is unfinished in your life is allowed to be unfinished at 1 in the morning, because there is no examination and no deadline, and nowhere you are supposed to have arrived by. And notice, this is the last piece, that you have almost certainly been doing it about sleep as well. That is the reaching you can feel most directly tonight. Sleep is the future thing. It is out ahead of you, and you have been extending toward it for hours, checking whether it is nearer. And the checking is the exact same motion as the student's arm reaching for a stroke that is not there. There is nothing to attain tonight, not even sleep. which is, as it happens, the only condition under which it tends to arrive. But let us not turn that into a technique either, because then it becomes one more thing being reached for, and we are back where we started. And notice how the reaching feels once you catch it. It is a small forward pressure, a slight tightness across the front of the body, a sense of being not quite here, of the present moment being a corridor rather than a room. It is so constant that most people never notice it at all, in the way you do not notice a sound that has been going all day until it stops. Let us feel the reaching, and let it go, and then rest. Notice whether there is a slight forward lean in you, not in your body necessarily, but in your attention, a leaning toward the next thing, toward morning, toward the alarm, toward being asleep. See if you can let that lean come back, not all the way, not by force. Just let it stop pulling forward for a moment, not by pushing it away, just by noticing that there is nowhere it needs to go. Let the shoulders drop back and down into the bed. Let the arms be heavy. Let the hands lie open on the blanket, holding nothing at all. Let the jaw come apart and the tongue rest low in the mouth, and the space between the eyebrows go smooth and wide. Let the breath come in and go out with nothing being aimed at. This is not the preparation for anything. This is it. A person lying warm in a dark room in the middle of the night, breathing, which is a complete and finished thing exactly as it stands. There is nothing to reach for tonight. There is nothing to become. Let the weight of you settle further into the bed, the head, the shoulders, the hips, the heels. Let each of them give a little more than it was giving a moment ago. The night is not a corridor to the morning. It is the room you are in. Let us rest here for a while. When you are ready, we will go on together. Because the Sutra makes one promise, and it comes immediately after the line about attainment, and it is the reason people carry this text in their coats. It says that when the mind is without obstruction, there is no fear. That is a large claim, and it deserves to be looked at slowly rather than accepted. So let us go out into the dark with somebody. A woman walking a track she has known for 30 years at 11 at night, with a dead phone and no torch, and half a mile to go. The path runs between two villages, and is about 1.5 miles, and she has walked it since she was a girl. In daylight, it is nothing at all. She has done it with shopping in both hands. A farm track, then a field edge with a wall on the left, then a short piece of woodland where the trees meet overhead, then the last field and the lane and the lights of home. She could describe every gate on it with her eyes shut. She knows where the ground stays wet for a week after rain, and which stretch has the loose stone, and the exact place where the wall has come down and been badly rebuilt twice. Tonight, she is walking it at 11 o'clock with a dead phone in her pocket and no torch. It was not planned, and she is not a reckless person. She stayed later than she meant to at her sister's, and the battery went at some point during the evening, and there was a moment at the door where she considered the offer of a bed and decided, with the confidence of a woman who has walked that path several thousand times, that it was fine. The first 200 yards of it are perfectly fine. Then the track turns, and the light from her sister's kitchen window goes behind the hedge, and she comes out onto the open field edge, and it is absolutely black, not merely dim, black. She cannot see her own feet. She cannot see the wall she knows is 4 feet to her left. She puts a hand out to find it, and it is not where she expects, and for a moment she does not know which way she is facing, and something goes through her chest that she has not felt since she was about 9. She stops, which is the only sensible thing to do, and does not feel sensible at all, and in the dark, standing still, she discovers what everybody discovers, which is that the mind does not tolerate an empty space. It furnishes it. There is something at the edge of the field. She cannot see it, and she knows it is there. There is something behind her. Nothing that could be described, nothing with a shape, just the certainty of an occupied space where a moment ago there was a track she had walked since she was a child. Every sound the night makes arrives with an explanation already attached to it, and none of the explanations are good ones, and they arrive faster than she can dismiss them. She considers going back. She is close enough that it would take 4 minutes, and there is a spare room, and her sister would not even ask why. And then, for no better reason than pride, and the fact that her coat was already wet, and the stubbornness she inherited from her mother, she does not. She stands still instead, with her hand on the wall she has now found, and she waits. And this is the part of the story worth having. After about 6 or 7 minutes, the field comes back. Not all at once, and not because the night got lighter. Slowly, the way an image comes up in developing fluid. First the sky, which turns out not to be black at all, but a very deep grey blue with a difference in it where the cloud edge is. Then the line of the wall, because a wall is darker than a field. Then the field itself, faintly, and the shape of the trees at the end of it. And, after a while longer, the pale line of the track, which is lighter than the grass on either side of it, and is, once you can see it, unmistakable. That is the whole of what had been wrong with the world. Her eyes had been in a lit kitchen for 4 hours. That is all that had happened. It takes 20 or 30 minutes for a human eye to open fully in the dark, and she had given it about 90 seconds before deciding the world had become a hostile place. When she can finally see it properly, she laughs out loud, alone, in a field, at 11 o'clock at night. The thing at the edge of the field is the water trough. It has been there since before she was born. She has leaned on it. The woodland is the worst stretch, because the trees close over and take the sky away, and for 100 yards she is back where she started. But she knows now that it comes back, which changes everything about how those 100 yards feel, and she keeps her hand out for the wall and does not stop. She walks the rest of it slowly, and beyond the woodland she can see well enough to place her feet, and by the last field she is walking normally, and when she comes out into the lane, the lights of the houses are so bright that they hurt, and she has to look away from them. She did it again the following week, deliberately this time on a clear night, with a torch in her pocket that she did not take out, and it was, she said, one of the more pleasant walks of her life. And what she said about it afterward, to somebody who asked her why on earth she would, was this: nothing out there had changed, not one thing. The only difference was that my eyes were open. She became, in a small way, an advocate for it. She would tell people at the school gate that they ought to try walking home without a torch, and be met with the expression that remark deserves. But she was right about one thing, and she knew it. A torch does not open your eyes. It does the opposite. It keeps them shut and gives you a bright circle of ground and a wall of absolute blackness 3 feet beyond it, and you walk the whole way inside a small lit room, seeing nothing, with everything outside the beam more frightening than it was before. There is a kind of reassurance that works like that too. A small bright circle, and everything outside it worse. Come back now, gently, to your own room, to the dark, and the weight of the blanket, and the breath moving quietly in and out. Here is the Sutra's one promise, and it comes directly after everything we spoke about in the last hour. Because there is nothing to attain, the text says, one who rests in this wisdom has a mind without obstruction, and without obstruction there is no fear, beyond all delusion and at rest. Now, that is a large claim, and I do not want to hand it to you dressed up. It is not promising that you will never be afraid again. Nothing honest could promise that, and the sleep recording certainly should not. Fear is not a defect. It is a good and ancient system that keeps people from walking off cliffs, and nothing in this tradition asks you to dismantle it. If you are in danger, being afraid is the correct response, and no amount of contemplation should ever talk you out of it, and any teaching that tries is a bad teaching. What the line points at is narrower and much more familiar, and it is what happened to a woman standing still on a field edge at 11 at night. The word usually translated as obstruction is worth sitting with. It means something like a covering or a hindrance, something in the way. And what is in the way almost always is not danger. It is the furniture the mind puts into a space it cannot see, because the dark itself is completely harmless. Nothing has ever been hurt by an absence of light. What is unbearable for those first 6 or 7 minutes is not the field. It is what the mind does with a field it cannot see. The certainty of an occupied space, the shape at the edge, the sound with an explanation attached. All of that is manufactured at speed out of nothing by a system that would rather have a terrible answer than no answer at all. And you know this from 3 in the morning, which is where we all learn it. It is the same machinery doing the same job on the same schedule. A space it cannot see into, the future mostly, or the inside of somebody else's head, and a system that would rather furnish it badly than leave it open. The thing you are afraid of at 2 o'clock is very rarely the thing itself. It is the version of it your mind assembled in the dark. The conversation that has not happened, played out 3 ways, each worse. The illness that has not been diagnosed. The sentence somebody will probably never say to you. The future that arrives fully furnished and unpleasant at an hour when you cannot check a single detail of it. Water troughs, all of them. Things you have leaned on in daylight without a second thought. And notice that the mind does this fastest when it is tired, in the dark, and alone, which is precisely the combination it is worst equipped for, and precisely the combination in which most of us do our hardest thinking. Nobody makes good judgments at 2 in the morning. Nobody ever has. The material is bad and the light is worse. So the promise in the Sutra is not that danger disappears. It is that when the mind stops filling the space, when the grasping and the projecting quieten down, and the eyes finally open, what is actually there turns out to be the path you have walked since you were a girl. There is one more thing in this that matters at your hour, and it concerns time. 6 or 7 minutes. That is how long she stood there before the field came back, and it felt, she said afterward, like a very long time indeed, long enough to consider turning back twice. The eyes do not open on demand. They open at the rate they open, and no amount of wanting speeds it up. And the only thing required of a person in the meantime is to not go anywhere, which is worth remembering if tonight is long. You are not doing it wrong because it has not happened yet. You may simply be 6 minutes into a thing that takes 20. And notice how she got there, because it is the only method in this chapter. She did not fight the fear. She did not talk herself out of it, or tell herself firmly that there was nothing there, which would not have worked and which she had already tried. She stood still. She put her hand on something solid, and she waited, without going anywhere, for as long as it took. That is not a technique for producing courage. It is simply what a person can do when they cannot see. Stop, hold on to something real, and give it time. That is all. That is the whole practice tonight, and you are already doing it. You are lying still in the dark, with your hand on something solid, waiting. Nothing is being asked of you except that, not understanding, not letting go, not achieving anything, just staying where you are, warm, with your hand on something solid, while the eyes take the time they take. Let us stay here for a long while now, and let the eyes of the mind open at their own speed. Begin with the sounds, whatever your room is doing, something distant, something in the building, something so close you would not normally count it as a sound at all. Let them arrive without explanation. Nothing has to be identified tonight, and nothing has to be dealt with. And now let the attention come down into the body, slowly, taking its time. The scalp loose, the forehead wide, the space between the eyebrows going smooth, the eyelids heavy, the small muscles all around the eyes, which have been working since morning, letting go. The cheeks, the jaw, let the teeth come apart, the tongue resting low and soft in the mouth, the throat open, the back of the neck long, the shoulders dropping back and down into the bed, further than you would think possible, the upper arms heavy, the elbows, the forearms, the hands, and each finger holding nothing at all, the chest rising and falling on its own, the ribs moving a little at the sides, the belly soft. Let the breath come down into it and let it lift and settle without any help. The lower back spreading and widening, the hips giving their whole weight downward, the thighs heavy, the knees unlocked, the calves releasing, the ankles, the feet, and the soles of the feet, which carried you all day and have not been noticed once, and now the whole of you at once, lying warm and still in a dark room, entirely held, from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet. Nothing above the surface needs to hold anything up. The bed has been doing all of it since you lay down. Let the breath come and go without instruction. A little longer on the way out, if that happens by itself. And if the mind furnishes the dark, if something arrives with a shape and the story attached, you do not have to argue with it. Let it be there. Let your hand stay on the wall. The eyes are still opening. There is nothing in this room but the room. The furniture you know is there. The door where the door is. The window with the night behind it. Nothing has come in, and nothing is waiting. And the shapes at the edges are the shapes you have leaned on for years. Let us rest here for a long while. When you are ready, we will go on together quietly for the last part of the night, because the text does something unexpected at the very end. Having spent its whole length taking things apart, it stops explaining altogether and finishes with a handful of syllables that most translators leave in the original and do not try to render at all. There is a monk coming down off a mountain, having spent a long time up there, and the first thing he does when he gets home is the washing up. Let us go and watch him do it. He came down off the mountain on a Thursday in the back of somebody's car on a road that took 2 hours and felt, after 3 months of walking pace, like being fired out of something. He was home by the middle of the afternoon. He had not gone up there to become anything. That should be said, because it is the sort of story that gets improved in the retelling. He had gone because a friend had the use of the place and because he was between two things in his life and did not want to spend the gap in a city. 3 months, a hut with a stove, a stack of firewood. He had cut himself in the first week, 1 window, and a great deal of silence. It had not been a mystical arrangement in any sense that would make a good film. It had been cold and often boring, and there had been a period in the 2nd month when he had seriously considered walking down and getting a bus and telling nobody. The house he came back to was the one he had left, a shared house on a street of shared houses with 2 other people in it, both of whom were out at work and would not be back for hours. And what was in the sink, of course, was the washing up, not his. Somebody's breakfast, and a pan from the night before with something burnt hard into the bottom of it, and 4 mugs with tea rings at different heights, and the particular arrangement of a sink that has been used by people in a hurry. He stood there in the kitchen doorway with his bag still on his shoulder and looked at it for a while. And then he put the bag down on the floor and rolled his sleeves and did the washing up. That is the whole of the story. There is genuinely no more to it than that. There was a moment before he started. He told somebody about this later, and it was the only detail he ever volunteered, where he stood at the sink and felt the whole of the 3 months trying to organize itself into an opinion about the washing up, that it was beneath him now, or that it was a beautiful and sacred task, or that it was a test. And then the hot tap ran, and he stopped having opinions and did it. He filled the bowl and did the mugs first because that is how you do it, and then the plates, and then he stood there for some time with the burnt pan, scraping at it with a thumbnail in a way that was clearly not going to work, and eventually left it to soak and dried his hands on a tea towel that was not clean and put the kettle on. His housemate came in at 6 and said, "You're back. God, how was it? What was it like?" And he said, "It was good," which was true and useless, and then could not say anything else at all, and she assumed he was tired and let it go. He tried later that year with somebody who asked more carefully, and what he said in the end, after several false starts, and with the apologetic look of a man who knows he is giving a disappointing answer, was, "It is the same washing up." She waited for more, in the way people do, with her head slightly on one side. What he could have said, if he had been willing to sound ridiculous, was something like this. Up there for the first 6 weeks, he had spent most of his waking time somewhere else, planning, reviewing, composing sentences to people who were 300 miles away, wondering how the whole thing was going and whether it was working and what he would be like at the end of it. He had gone to a hut on a mountain to be present and had brought the entire apparatus with him in his bag, and somewhere in the 8th or 9th week it had quietened. Not dramatically. It had simply become less interesting to be somewhere else than to be sitting by a stove listening to the wind. That is all that happened. And the consequence, which he could not explain to anybody, was that a sink full of mugs on a Thursday afternoon was no longer an obstacle standing between him and his life. It was his life. There was no other one going on elsewhere that this was interrupting. No, that is it. That is the whole of it. I went up there for 3 months and I came back, and it is the same washing up. And it is completely different, and I cannot tell you how. And if I try, it will sound like nothing at all. He was right. It does. It has taken us most of a night to get to a sentence he could not say in a kitchen. Come back now, gently, to your own room, to the dark and the weight of the blanket and your own breathing going quietly on. We are near the end of the text now, and it does something that nobody expects the first time. Having taken everything apart, form, feeling, the senses, the world, the teachings, the path, wisdom, attainment, the sutra stops explaining. It does not conclude. It does not summarize. It does not offer a final position that you could write down on a card and carry away in a wallet, which is what most of us want from a text and what this one flatly declines to provide. It gives you a handful of syllables and finishes. They are usually left untranslated wherever the text is chanted, which is itself a decision worth noticing. Generations of translators who rendered everything else into Chinese, Tibetan, Japanese, English, and stopped at the last line and left it in the original. I am going to say them once plainly, and then we will let them go. Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. Translators disagree about how to render it, and several of the best say it should not be rendered at all. But the loose sense, and please hold it loosely, is something like gone, gone, gone beyond, gone altogether beyond, awake, so be it. Now, why does a text that has spent its whole length being rigorous suddenly end with a sound? Because a conclusion would be one more handle. Think about what would have happened otherwise. 15 centuries of people memorizing the conclusion, quoting the conclusion, checking each other against the conclusion, forming schools around slightly different readings of the conclusion, and gripping it, all of them, exactly as tightly as the man gripped the rail. That is the answer, and it is entirely consistent with everything the sutra has done up to that point. It has just spent several paragraphs removing every rail in the building, including its own. If it ended with a tidy summary, and therefore the truth is this, it would have handed the reader something new to grip on the way out of the door. So instead, it hands you something you cannot grip, a sound, a handful of syllables in a language that most of the people chanting them have never spoken, which cannot be argued with, which contains no proposition, and which does nothing at all except get said. The text even tells you what it thinks of the thing. It calls the mantra great and unequaled, and says it removes all suffering in language considerably more extravagant than anything that came before it. And then it simply says the syllables and stops. No unpacking. The most analytical text in Buddhism ends by declining to analyze. And people have been saying it for 15 centuries. In halls, in the dark, on boats, walking, in hospitals, under their breath in situations that frightened them. Not because they worked out what it meant, because saying it does something that understanding it does not. And everyone who has said it in a bad hour knows exactly what that something is and cannot describe it either. There is something else in that choice worth noticing, and it is kind. A sound is available to everybody. An argument is not. If the text had ended with a philosophical conclusion, it would have belonged to the people who could follow the philosophy, the educated, the quick, the ones with time to study. By ending with syllables, it hands the whole thing to the woman with 4 children and no schooling, and 30 seconds to herself, on the same terms, with nothing lost. That is why it travelled, not because it was clever, because the last thing in it required nothing of anyone. Now, gone beyond. That phrase is where people go wrong, and it is why we have come to a sink full of somebody else's breakfast things. Beyond sounds like elsewhere. It sounds like the goal at the end of the road. Leave all this behind, get past the ordinary, arrive somewhere better and stay there. And that reading has sent a great many sincere people up a great many mountains looking for a place that is not the kitchen. But look at what this text has done with every beyond it has offered so far. Form is emptiness. And immediately, before you can leave, emptiness is form. The openness is not behind the world. It is the world. There is nothing to attain. No destination version of you waiting at the end. The mind without obstruction is not a mind that has gone somewhere. It is a mind that has stopped filling the dark. Every single time, the beyond has turned out to be here. The empty house was not a metaphor for a better house. The jug was a jug. The rainbow was in the valley people actually lived in. The choir happened in a badminton hall. The rail was in a municipal swimming pool with the wrong smell and cold tiles. And the field was a field she had walked since she was a girl. Nothing in 3 hours has pointed away from ordinary life, not once. So what has gone in gone beyond is not you, and it is not the world. What has gone is the grasping, the reaching, the furniture, the handrail, the idea that there is somewhere else to get to. And what is left, when all of that has gone, is a Thursday afternoon and a sink full of mugs, which is not a downgrade. That is the thing to hear. The mountain was not the real part, and the kitchen, the disappointing return. There is one life, and he was in a hut for 3 months of it, and he is at a sink now, and the difference between those two is much smaller than anybody expects. It is the same washing up, and it is completely different. And he was right that if you try to say how, it sounds like nothing. Let us finish with the syllables in the only way that is useful at this hour, which is to let them be a sound and nothing else. You do not have to say anything. Nobody is asking you to chant in the dark at 1 in the morning, but you might let the shape of it move through you once, silently, the way a bar of music does when it arrives uninvited, gone, gone, gone beyond. And notice that there is nothing in it to work out, no claim, nothing to agree or disagree with, nothing to hold. That is what it is for. It is a sound that gives the mind nothing to do. And a mind with nothing to do, at this hour, in a warm, dark room, tends to do the thing it has been trying to do all night. And this whole long evening has been the same thing, in a very much wordier form, which is the price of doing it in English at 3 in the morning. Every image tonight, the empty house, the copyist's lamp, the shape of air with a skin on it, the rainbow that was never in the field, 30 people in a badminton hall, the fingers coming off the rail, 5 alive strokes in a bin, a woman standing still in a black field, has been pointing at one small thing. There is room, that is all. 3 words after 3 hours, and they are not a conclusion. They are a description of something that was true before we started and did not require any of this to become true. There is more room than you thought, in everything. In the jug, in the field, in the hall, in the pool, in the night, including in the thing that is heavy. Nothing has been taken away from you tonight, and nothing has been added. No belief was required, and none was installed. The furniture is where it was. The difficulty is where it was. And there is space around all of it that has been there the entire time. Let us rest here for a long while now, with nothing being explained. Let the words go, all of them, mine and the sutras. They were only ever the wall around the space, and the space was the point, and you have been lying inside it all evening. Let the shoulders come down. Let the arms be heavy. Let the hands lie open on the blanket, holding nothing at all. Let the jaw come apart, and the tongue rest low in the mouth, and the space between the eyebrows go smooth and wide. Let the breath come in, and fill a space, and leave, and let the space close, and let it happen again without any instruction from you. There is nowhere beyond this. There is nothing further in. There is no version of this night that you are failing to reach. There is a person lying warm in a dark room breathing, and that is the whole of it, and it is enough. When you are ready, we will go on together, one last time, for the end of the night, because there is one thing left, and it is the smallest and the plainest, and we are going back to where we started. There is a house on the edge of a town that was finished on a Thursday afternoon in October, a long time ago now. It is full of people and coats and furniture and a great deal of accumulated life. Let us go back and stand in it and see what the builder meant. The house is full now and has been for a long time. There are coats on the back of the door, far too many coats, most of them belonging to nobody currently in the building. There are shoes in the hall in a heap that has been the subject of several family discussions. There is a bookcase that has been in 4 different rooms and will probably move again. There is a piano against the wall in the front room that was bought second-hand for a child who played it for 2 years and stopped, and which is still there, and which nobody will get rid of. There is a dog who is supposed to be everybody's responsibility and is hers. There is an argument about a chair that is still occasionally revived for entertainment. There is a scar on the kitchen door frame from that same chair, carried through badly in about the 4th year. There is a stain on the stair carpet that 3 separate people have claimed responsibility for over the years, in the way that families do. There is a wall in the back room that is a different white from all the other whites, because it was painted on a Saturday when the shop had run out. There is a mark on the wall by the light switch at exactly the height of a hand, which is 20 years of hands. The 4-year-old who lay on the bare boards and shouted at the ceiling is 26 and lives in another city and comes back at Christmas and sleeps in a room that has been slowly turning into an office around the edges of him. The baby on her hip is doing exams and is taller than her and communicates mainly by leaving doors open. It is 1:45 on an entirely ordinary night in the middle of November, and she is the last one up, and she has come down for a glass of water and has not gone back up. She is standing in the hall in the dark, which she does more often than she would admit, and which is not sadness. It is one of about 4 minutes in a day that belong to nobody. The stairs go up in the same place with the same turn. The floor still makes the same sound. She has never had it fixed, and now she would not know how to live without it, because it is how she knows who is coming down. And what she is noticing, she could not tell you why tonight, of all the thousands of ordinary nights, is the sound of the house. Everyone is asleep upstairs. The dog is asleep in the kitchen, on a bed she is not supposed to be on. The heating went off 2 hours ago, and the pipes are doing the slow ticking thing they have done on winter nights since the year the house was built. And underneath all of that, faintly, there is the sound she has not consciously heard since a Thursday afternoon in October a very long time ago. The particular ringing quality of a house with air in it. It is not the same, obviously. There is a great deal of furniture in the way now, and furniture eats sound. The hall does not come back at her the way it did when there was nothing at all in it, and a child was shouting for the pleasure of hearing himself return. But it is there. She stands in the dark for a while, longer than she means to, with the glass in her hand, and looks at the shapes of things she cannot properly see. The banister, the doorways, the pile of shoes, the coats, and she thinks about the builder who died 4 years ago and whose funeral they went to, and who had come back once in the meantime to look at a damp patch and had stood in the middle of a house full of children and washing and noise, saying nothing, with an expression she had not been able to read at the time and has thought about a great deal since. You have bought the space. The house is just what keeps the weather off it. She understood it that day, she thinks. Standing in his own finished work with a family shouting around him and a damp patch on a wall he had not built badly, looking pleased in a way he would never have been able to say out loud. 20-odd years of life have gone into these rooms, and the rooms are exactly as big as they ever were. Nothing has been used up. All the arguments, all the birthdays, the flu winter, the year that was hard, the ordinary Tuesdays in their thousands. None of it filled anything. The space took all of it, and is still the space. There is one more thing she thinks on the stairs, and it is the reason this is the last story of the night. The house will empty again. Not soon, and not all at once. The exams will finish, and there will be a year of somebody being at home and not quite living there. And then a car will be loaded on a Sunday morning, and the second bedroom will become an office properly, rather than by degrees. She has watched it happen to other people and knows the shape of it. And what she notices, standing halfway up her own stairs at midnight with an empty glass, is that she is not afraid of it in the way she expected to be, because the space was never the furniture. It was never the coats or the shoes or the noise. All of that came in and filled it and will go out again, and the rooms will be the same rooms, and there will be light on bare boards again, and it will not be a loss, and she will probably stand in it and hear the ringing and think of a Thursday in October. She drinks the last of the water and goes up to bed. Come back now, one last time, to your own room, to the pillow and the dark and the weight of the blanket and your own breathing going quietly on without you. Here is the very last thing, and it is also the smallest of them. You have been lying in a room all night, and the room has been mostly room the entire time. Everything that has been going on in your mind, the difficulty, the day, the whole furnished interior of the last 3 hours, has been happening in something. The thoughts arrived and moved through and were replaced. Each one came in and took up a certain amount of space and left, and the place they came into was not made smaller by any of them. That is worth one slow moment before we finish, because it is the only thing tonight that you can check for yourself right now without believing anything. The thought you had 4 minutes ago is gone. So is the one before it. Where they were, there is now something else. And where that goes, there will be something else again. And whatever they have all been arriving in has not been used up or filled or worn out by a single one of them in your whole life. That is the space we have been circling all evening, under a word that frightened people unnecessarily for 2,000 years. Not a void, not a bleakness, not a hole where something ought to be, and not a truth behind the world that makes the world matter less. Room, the kind a house has on the day it is finished, and still has 20 years later underneath all the coats. The kind that makes a jug useful and lets a rainbow happen, and holds 30 voices in a badminton hall, and allows a man to let go of a rail without anything terrible occurring. And it is not somewhere else. That is the last thing, and it is the whole thing. And the Sutra says it in both directions, so that nobody can miss it. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Which means, translated into the language of a person lying awake at 3 in the morning, the room you are in is the openness, and the openness is the room you are in, and there is no other one being kept somewhere for people who have understood the text properly. The openness is here. It is this room, this bed, this body, this night, this heaviness, this breath. There is no further in. There is nothing to attain, and nothing behind this being kept from you. There is nothing you have failed to reach by being an ordinary tired person lying down in the dark. And notice, before we finish, that you have not been asked to do a single thing tonight that required effort, not to believe anything, not to let go of anything you are not ready to let go of, not to understand a text that has been argued over for 1,500 years by people who gave their whole lives to it. 2 fingers off a rail at most, and only if it came easily. That is deliberate. A teaching about openness that arrived as a demand would be a contradiction, and you would have quite rightly stopped listening somewhere in the second hour. Let us close the evening here then, with nothing left to explain. Let the breath come in, and let it go out, and let the out-breath be the longer of the two without your arranging it. Let the shoulders come down one last time. Let the arms be heavy. Let the hands lie open on the blanket, holding nothing at all. Let the jaw come apart, and the tongue rest low in the mouth, and the eyelids be heavy, and the space between the eyebrows go wide and smooth. Feel the warmth under the blanket and the cooler air on your face, and let both be true at once. Let the whole weight of you be handed over to the bed, the head, the shoulders, the back, the hips, the legs, the heels, given completely to something that has been holding you all night without being asked and without any help from you. We have kept a good deal of company between us tonight. There was an empty house on a Thursday afternoon in October, with the light lying across bare boards, and a builder standing out at the gate for 10 minutes with a cigarette, and a 4-year-old flat on the board shouting at the ceiling. There was a copyist by lamplight in a cold room, finishing something before midnight for once in his life. There was a woman in a hot room making a shape of air and putting a skin on it. There was a rainbow standing in Morgan's Field that had never been in Morgan's Field at all. There were 30 people in a badminton hall on a Tuesday who could not individually sing, and something above and between them that made a stranger cry. There was a man of 56 taking his fingers off a rail, one at a time, and finding that nothing happened. There were 5 living brushstrokes at the bottom of a bin, one of them with a T-ring across the corner, every one of them made by somebody who was not trying. There was a woman standing perfectly still in a black field at 11 at night, with her hand on a wall, while her eyes came open at their own speed. And there was a sink full of somebody else's breakfast things on a Thursday afternoon, and a man who put down his bag and did them. None of them were about anything other than one small thing, which is that there is more space in and around whatever is here than it appears to have from the inside. You do not need to remember any of it. Nobody will ask you in the morning. Nothing here works better for being remembered. There is no examination, and nothing here needs carrying anywhere. And if the whole evening has gone past you in a pleasant blur, then it has done exactly what it was for. If one image stayed, the light on bare boards, the bubble opening inside the glass, the hand coming off the rail, the field coming back out of the dark, let that be enough. One is plenty. One is more than most nights leave behind. If nothing stayed, that is enough as well. There was never anything here to acquire. It was a long, slow night with a voice in it, describing a space that was already there and did not need describing. So let the whole thing go now. The sutra, the stories, the words, the whole 3 hours of it. They were the wall. The room was the point, and the room does not need the wall to be talked about anymore. And let the heavy thing go too, not away, not solved, not smaller, not understood, and not turned into something you feel better about, just held more loosely with some air around it, in a room that turns out to be considerably larger than it seemed at 11 o'clock. There is room. There has been room the whole time. Before this recording started, and while you were lying here not sleeping, and it will still be there tomorrow at 4 in the afternoon in the middle of something entirely ordinary. May the grip ease wherever it happens to be tonight, and in its own time, without being forced. May the space around what is difficult be felt rather than argued for. May you be spared the work of becoming anyone before morning. And may whatever is beneath all your thinking, the quiet that the noise has been happening in, receive you now and hold you and let you rest. Whatever you brought to bed tonight, you may set it down now, in the middle of a room that is larger than it looked. It will still be there in the morning if you want it, and there will be more air around it by then. Thank you for spending these quiet hours here. It has been good to sit with you in the dark, and there is nothing at all left to do, and no need to remember a word of it. There is room to breathe. There always was, in every room you have ever been in, including this one. Let the breath come and let it go, and let the night take you. Sleep well, and good night.